On one final pre-draft edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we're going to get into some rumors about what the Eagles are going to do in the first round, my 5 draft dreams for the first round, and last second my guys coming up next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh yeah, one final Locked On Eagles before the 2024 NFL Draft. What's going on, Eagles fans? I'm Louie DiBiase, your host for the night. Today's episode, we're brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, you all know this, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. And thank you guys so much for being with us throughout this draft process. There has been so much prospect coverage since the Eagles blew that wild card game in January against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, from Senior Bowl coverage to the Combine, Pro Days, mock drafts, my guys, rankings, scenarios, trade talk, free agency as well. You guys have been with us through it all, and we really hope that tomorrow is a celebration of all of that hard work and all of this speculation season. Hopefully the Eagles can give us what we want tomorrow in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Little PSAs and programming information. Locked On Eagles, as we have been for the last 7 years, we are going to be live throughout the entire first round, so you can find us live on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. For our audio listeners that are only listening right now, get over to YouTube tomorrow starting at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Nope, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to go until, I'd say, 11 to 11:30, considering the NFL takes forever on day one to get these picks done. The Eagles currently at 22, so I'd imagine that's a couple hours into the process, but the rumors are they're going to probably trade up. I think that's the most likely scenario, so I don't think we're going to have to wait long after 8 o'clock tomorrow to see who the Eagles pick, but we do have technically a pregame live draft show tomorrow starting at 7, so you can find that on YouTube, and we'll be live throughout the entire night. But we've got one more show for you today to get you ready for the first round tomorrow night in Detroit. And again, I think the live show, what's great about it is just the raw reactions of Gino and I think that's really created some great moments, both positive and negative. For the most part, it's been positive, even if it was unjustified after seeing the pick come to fruition in the NFL, like the Jalen Reagor pick. We loved it, and then that's embarrassing to look back on, but they've been mostly positive. We loved that selection. We really liked, of course, moving up for Jalen Carter last year, or when they got Devontae Smith. The most iconic moment, of course, is when they traded for A.J. Brown during the 2022 draft. And then, of course, there's been some negative reactions as well. Like, I absolutely could not stand, and it's, again, embarrassing now to look back on, but couldn't stand the Landon Dickerson pick in round 2 because they didn't take my guy in Asante Samuel Jr. I didn't love the Milton Williams pick in round 3. Like, there's been some rants for sure. The Jalen Hurts pick, of course, in the second round. I mean, I was irate on the podcast. Tomorrow, I'm feeling very good about it being a positive reaction based on a lot of the rumors we're hearing today. However, in the last few days about what the Eagles are planning to do trading up from 22. But again, remember, proceed with caution. This is silly season. This is smokescreen season. A lot of teams are throwing out there misinformation to throw you off the scent, to throw other teams off the scent about what their plans are. So I'm going to sort through the weeds on today's show in segment 1, because there were 3 key rumors that have come up over the last few days from very credible NFL insiders from different platforms about, again, they all say the Eagles are trying to trade up. Like, we know that is absolutely a fact from Howie Roseman. That's what he does the majority of the time anyway. But each person is saying it's for a different position. So I'm going to play a game real quick. Smoke or fire. If I think it's wrong, if the report is wrong, a rumor I don't believe, I'm going to say smoke. If it's fire, that means I think this is very likely for the Birds, or it's definitely on the table. So there's 3 key rumors I want to get into. One we actually talked about yesterday, and it's the Eagles trading inside the top 15 for one of the top 2 cornerback prospects in Terrion Arnold from Alabama, or Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. We know Tony Pauline, who's very tuned in with the Eagles. He got the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson pick, right? Or I should say signing this offseason, the reunion with CGJ. He got the Cam Jurgens pick, right, a few years ago, saying that makes so much sense and the Eagles really like him. He's saying the Eagles want to trade up to the 12th overall pick with the Denver Broncos, and Quinyon Mitchell would be that guy at cornerback. We also heard Daniel Jeremiah say last week that colleges are telling him the Eagles are doing a lot of work on their corners. Like, they're the team doing the most work on corners. We saw James Palmer a few weeks ago from NFL Network say the Eagles have met with almost every top-tier prospect at corner that could be a day one pick. Well, the rumors and reports continued to circle today. Benjamin Albright, who is a prominent NFL insider, very in tune with the Denver Broncos, he works for the Denver sports market, he did his mock draft today, and he had the Eagles also trading up to 12 for Quinyon Mitchell. So you combine all of that, and I think even Diana Rossini today said the Eagles are trying to move up for a corner. You combine all of these people saying the same thing, and I absolutely believe it. And it's not as unbelievable as if they were saying the Eagles are trying to move up for a linebacker like Edgerrin Cooper, or they're trying to take a safety or a running back. Like that, I'd be like, okay, that's probably smoke. But moving up for Mitchell or Arnold, I think there is absolute fire to that scenario. Now, of course, the Eagles can't guarantee they can get in range to get one of those guys. I mean, I think 12 would get the job done to get one of them. I can't imagine both go inside the top 10. There's going to be an early run on offense. You know, four quarterbacks are going to go and at least 2 wide receivers. So 6 picks are going to be from quarterback and receiver. And at least 7 probably, because I think Rome Odunze from Washington is going to be a selection. So that's 7. And then Dallas Turner likely to go inside the top 10. The edge rusher from Alabama, that's 8. I'd imagine one offensive lineman goes, that's 9. Like, to get to 12, I think Mitchell or Arnold should absolutely be available. Maybe even you have your pick of one of the two. I thought it might be Terry and Arnold a few days ago. I'm starting to change my opinion, and some of these reports are really pointing more towards Quinyon Mitchell. So I'm really believing that. Of course, another team could decide to take them earlier. You could justify those are 2 of the best players on defense in this prospect pool. So if that's the case, this next report about the Eagles potentially looking to move up for an offensive tackle, I also think there's fire to that. I think Howie Roseman is very open to trading up for both positions, for tackle or corner. He can't guarantee who's going to be there. So let's say Mitchell, let's say he only wants to trade up for Mitchell and not Arnold, right? And Mitchell goes inside the top 10 or 12. Let's say he can't move up to Denver, or it's just too rich for his blood, and he wants to get to 16 with Seattle. Let's say he can't get one of those corners or both of them. He might prefer then to make a move up for, let's say, Daniel Jeremiah in his mock draft today, his final mock. He had the Eagles trading up to 12 for Talise Fuyaga, the tackle from Oregon State. Maybe they move up for the guy that makes, to me, the most sense for Jeff Stoutland, Washington's Troy Fatanu, or Olu Fashanu falls down the board, or let's say Joe Alt somehow surprisingly isn't one of the top tackles taken, and he falls outside the top 12, and you can go get him. Unfortunately, because I'm not going to be happy if they give up a 2 or another future day 2 pick to go get one of these tackles, not going to be happy with that if that is the outcome tomorrow. I unfortunately do think there's fire to that. If the Eagles are going to trade up for a position that's not corner, it's going to be tackle. They like to be proactive at replacing their stars up front on the offensive line. But I'll tell you, Daniel Jeremiah's mock, he said it's Fuyaga at 12. The Eagles trade up. If they give up 50 or 53 for a tackle, that might be a backup for multiple years, or maybe he's a right guard. But you can't guarantee when Lane Johnson's going to retire, and you waste multiple years on a rookie contract for that player. I'm going to be upset. I'm not saying that I don't understand the logic behind taking a tackle this year, but you have invested $63 million a year total in Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, and Lane Johnson. That's the 5th, 6th, and 8th highest paid lineman in 2024 and on an annual yearly basis based on current contracts. Your other 2 starters you invested 2nd and high 3rd round picks on in Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen. I understand some of the logic to getting a tackle, heck, even trading up for one, but you've invested enough in that position for now. I'm not saying don't replace Lane Johnson. You can do that when he retires. You can replace Tyler Steen at right guard if that doesn't work out, but you've done enough there for now where you can take 1 year and 1 pick to go get this other position right at corner. Like, I promise you it's going to be okay. I'm not even saying don't take a tackle this year. I'm not even saying don't take one early. Take one at 50. Take a guard at 53 too. Hell, take 2 linemen on day 2 if you give me my corner on day 1. I just think it's got to be corner, but I do think there's fire behind the tackle talk, especially for a trade up. It's a very good tackle class. I will say in a vacuum, although I don't want to take the position, I really do like the prospects at that position in this year's draft. And then there's one other rumor that I want to get into, smoke or fire, and it's from Dan Graziano, an NFL insider for ESPN. He says, and I quote, "People I've talked to believe the Eagles want to try and move up for a receiver. Though one theory I found very interesting and potentially hilarious is that they could move up for a tight end in Brock Bowers, given their recent prediction, or I should say, he said predilection for Georgia players. New word to me, but I will say infatuation. I'll replace the word for Georgia players. Smoke or fire? I think there's smoke here. I don't believe this rumor. I could see them taking a receiver, or if Brock Bowers falls at 22, or he falls to like 18 to 20, I could see them do a small trade up for him or a Brian Thomas from LSU. I could see them taking Xavier Worthy at 22, or if they trade down to, I don't know, 28 to 30, I could see them taking a receiver in that scenario. But I do not foresee Howie Roseman trading up, like trading assets, premier assets, for a luxury player that you really do not need. Like, again, if there's a receiver that's BPA at 22 or you trade down and take one, I could actually probably get behind that. The fan in me, maybe more than the analyst, but I could get behind that. But trading up, like substantially so too, for a receiver or a tight end when you have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley in the backfield, plenty of weapons there. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that idea at all. I don't believe that one. That's smokescreen. That's the Eagles are trying to get a corner and a tackle, but let's throw people off the scent by throwing that one out there. That one I definitely do not buy. So, of course, you guys can tell I have certain motivations for this draft, for day 1, what I want the Eagles to do. I have 5 draft dreams, though, that I want to see play out tomorrow, and I rank them in order of preference. I'm going to get into that coming up next, right here as we roll along on this final pre-draft edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, want to let you know before the draft starts, the Locked On NFL Draft mock draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local experts, including Gino and I, of the Locked On Podcast Network, are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from our local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft and on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. So one final show before we go live all night tomorrow, 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. I'm sure we're going to be churning out content on Twitter as well, at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. Gino, it's his wedding anniversary today, so we gave him the day off. He's going to be very busy with me tomorrow. He will be back for the live show. We're also going to have a recorded podcast for our audio listeners and our YouTube viewers after the Eagles do make their pick tomorrow night, assuming they make a pick. I cannot see a scenario where Howie's trading outside of 22, outside of day 1. I don't think that's going to happen. There's certain things I think could happen. Again, I think there's fire behind the moving up for a tackle talk, but there's also things that I want to happen. You guys all know I want a cornerback very badly. I will not shut up about it. And if that's not the result tomorrow, unless they take like Xavier Worthy and really poke the 10-year-old kid in me, the fan in me, the young Eagles fan, and get me excited about a skill position player like a Brock Bowers, unless they do that, I think I'm going to be pretty upset if they don't take a corner. Again, I'll be rational. I'll try to understand the logic behind things, and I'm not going to put my corner glasses on, but I will give me at least like 10 to 15 minutes to rant. In segment 1, allow me to rant tomorrow night. Segments 2 and 3, I'll try to come back down to earth and be a little more rational, but I really want a corner. So there's things I want. We're all rooting for certain things tomorrow night. Here are my 5 draft dreams for the Eagles on day 1. So the 5 outcomes I want to see the most, ranked in order of preference. Let's start with number 1, and this one is obvious if you've listened to our show over the last 2 months. My number 1 dream for tomorrow night, the Eagles trade inside the top 15, preferably at 12, to guarantee that they get either one of 2 corners, Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell or cornerback from Alabama, Terrion Arnold. Like, those are just the guys, and I got somebody on Twitter that asked me, are these two just the best of a bad situation? Is this the right year to trade up for a corner? Is Arnold and Mitchell, are they Sauce and Stingley from a few years ago? Are they J.C. Horn and Pat Surtain? I don't know if they're right there, but they're pretty close. Like, this is a really good top 2 to me. Prospect-wise, these guys are top 15 talents. Of course, the defensive group this year just isn't as great as the offensive group in the draft, so they're going to be, I think, maybe taken a lot higher than in years past where there were more edge rushers and defensive tackles and, I don't know, just other positions of need. Like, this year, most teams are going to want quarterbacks, receivers, and offensive tackles. Like, that's just the reality. So I think on defense that bumps them up a little bit just based on the team needs of, the teams in the top 15, or I should say 15 through 20. I think they're both very good blue chip prospects, very comfortable giving up a second round pick for one of the 2. I just think they can fit in any defense, and I like Mitchell more than Arnold, but I'll take either. My second dream for tomorrow night, if they don't get Mitchell or Arnold, give me a small trade up to go get Clemson corner Nate Wiggins. This one I think is a little less realistic. I don't know if the Eagles like Wiggins. I don't know if they like his style and his frame for Vic Fangio's defense, and although I don't want to start taking players based on Fangio's scheme and his scheme alone, I do think that's going to carry a lot of weight. And Nate Wiggins right now does not carry a lot of weight, literally, and I don't know if they're going to like that. I love the 4.2 speed. I love the man coverage ability and the length and the upside. I know he has tackling issues right now, but I think he would be worth a small trade up. I would try to make it work with him in this scheme. I think he's just a really sticky corner that's going to translate well. And I don't know if he'll fall to 22. If he does, that's definitely a dream scenario, but I could see the Eagles making like a small trade up from like 22 to 18 to go get a Cooper DeJean or Nate Wiggins. My second dream, if they miss out on Mitchell and Arnold, I'm still very comfortable with that third corner on my board, Nate Wiggins, as somebody the Eagles trade up for. Not inside the top 15, but move up 3 to 5 spots. I'm cool with that for sure. That's my second dream. My third dream for day 1 for the Birds. And this one is definitely a pipe dream. That's why I called it a dream, because I don't think they'll do it. Trading down from 22 to picks 25 through 32 and taking Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. I cannot see the Eagles. I think I'm going to die before the Eagles take a linebacker in the first round. But if they were going to do it, this could be the year. Like Edgerrin Cooper, it's definitely a weaker linebacker class. Some people don't think any of these guys are worth a day 1 pick. I agree with that outside of Edgerrin Cooper. Like his length, his coverage upside, his range, his speed getting sideline to sideline, the blitzing ability coming downhill. Like he could be what you're hoping Devin White is, only long term. Edgerrin Cooper to me is worth a first round pick. And if you can move down and maybe recoup a third round pick that you lost in the Kenny Pickett trade, when you swap that 98th pick for 120 in round 4, I would be cool with that. That's actually my third favorite outcome if you don't go with one of those top corners in Mitchell, Arnold, or Wiggins. Fourth dream, I know this one is a heart pick over a head pick. It's the fan of me talking, but you got to let the fan out of you during the draft. Like it's fun. The NFL draft is meant to be fun as well. I'm not going to say this is the most rational use of assets or resources, but man, would it make the Eagles as unguardable as they already are on offense. And it would just be a lot of fun to bring in one of these deep threats. Give me LSU wide receiver Brian Thomas, or give me Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy. I'm not saying trade up for them like Dan Graziano of ESPN is saying that they could. Again, don't believe that report, more smoke than fire. But if they're sitting there at 22 and Brian Thomas fell down the board in their lap, or Xavier Worthy is there, or you trade down and take an Xavier Worthy after a run of other receivers go, the fan of me is going to love thinking about this offense. Jalen Hurts throwing the ball to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas, and Saquon Barkley. Like, that is just a fan's dream. That is the most unstoppable Eagles offense on paper that they've ever put together. And they've put together some pretty damn good ones. So that's my fourth dream. That's the fan of me. That's the kid in me coming out that just wants to watch YouTube highlights all of Friday morning on Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas from LSU. And again, they're deep threats, and they would make, there is some logic to that, because I'm not saying go get A.D. Mitchell or Ladd McConkey, or heck, even like don't trade up for Roma Dunze. I'm not saying that. But Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy, they're deep threats that can play in the slot. Different styles of deep threats, right? Brian Thomas is more of your DK Metcalf, like bigger style of deep threat. Xavier Worthy is your smaller, shiftier player that's a 4.2 speed guy, one of the fastest players we've ever seen at the college level. So different styles of a deep threat, but both would complement Brown, Smith, and Goddard, and Barkley in the way that I wanted Quez Watkins to over the last 2 years. It's the kind of wide receiver 3 that I want for this offense. So that's dream number 4. And then the fifth dream, I don't know if this is more of a dream and more of just a preference if my top 4 scenarios don't play out. Sit there at 22, give me Cooper DeJean from Iowa, give me Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. I'm sorry, just don't give me a lineman. I understand it. I'm not saying to change your philosophy every single year where suddenly you prioritize positions like, you can say corner or safety or linebacker or running back. I'm not saying prioritize those positions over the offensive line or defensive line. The majority of your years, they have the right philosophy in mind. The majority of years, you should be investing most of your top draft picks, your first and second rounders and third rounders, and top tier money, like big contracts, into the trenches. Those are the positions you should definitely prioritize, along with, of course, quarterback. But again, and I'm not even saying use this entire draft to take the other positions, but it's okay to invest a few premier assets, contracts, and picks into these other positions. Like, it's okay to do that. And so for me, no, none of my draft dreams this year is taking Troy Fautanu or J.C. Latham or Tyler Guyton, even though it would be cool that the Oklahoma connection with him and Lane Johnson and, whatever, people would be just saying this is what the Eagles do, which is smart, and they always stick to their guns, blah, 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 the meat and potatoes. Like, you're going to hear all those talking points, and I'm sure I'll say some of them as well, but I'm sorry, it's not what I want to see tomorrow night. You guys know it's normally not what I want to see. I understand it, though, most of the time. But now, you've invested a lot on both sides of the trenches. You've invested a lot. And I get Lane Johnson could retire next year or the year after, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I'm not burning any more rookie years on redshirt players. I need a corner to be here long term. I'm so hell-bent on this. This is very 2020 Lou that just won't stop talking about deep threats at receiver. That's how passionate I am about this, and I'm going nuts. I need a result tomorrow night. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, one final segment before the 2024 NFL Draft. Who are some last-second my guys for me that I'm almost annoyed that I'm now just starting to love in this process? We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person. I think Gino can attest to that. Well, yeah, of course I am. I have a huge competitive side. I think we all do. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part, messing with your boys, your friends. I can charge them rent, I should say, on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboard shows me the biggest Monopoly tycoons out there. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with your friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the Apple Store or on Google Play. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this final pre-draft edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Louie DiBiase riding solo. Again, Gino's wedding anniversary, or I don't think it's their wedding anniversary. I think it's just their overall anniversary when they met. Gino and Jen, congrats, guys. Gino, get ready. Tomorrow we've got our live show, 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern time. And it's going to, I'm sure, be another core memory for us. There's always been some great moments, me and Gino, on that show. So hopefully it's in a positive way. Hopefully I'm not breaking this camera, which I'm going to shake this thing. Like I'm going to break it if they take a lineman. If they trade a second-round pick to go get a tackle tomorrow, I'm sorry. I will not be rational, most likely, for 10 to 15 minutes. But hopefully we can react loud and proud in a positive way when they move up for a cornerback. It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of prospect work the last few days. As you heard, Gino and I, we did our big board show yesterday. So we've got our rankings all together and our, preferences for just our overall big board. We've been doing that and just a lot of prospect work lately. My guys and mock drafts, things like that, preparing for all 3 days. And it is kind of funny, like there's so many prospects to cover, and you can't hit on everybody. You can't just grind out tape every single day unless you're a scout. Like, I've got another full-time job. I've got a social life. I got this podcast to do every day. So there's some players that I think sometimes they're lost in the weeds. And it's funny, there are a few like last second my guys for me that I didn't pay attention to a lot, maybe because I was prioritizing other positions, thinking very heavily through an Eagles perspective, so they just kind of got lost on me. And there are a few of those players. Like I mentioned him in segment 2. I'm annoyed that I didn't really know the style of, and this might sound ridiculous because he's a top tier player at his position, but I did not do a lot of work on Brian Thomas. Like I kind of ignored. I know Marvin Harrison's a slam dunk prospect. Same with Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbor. It's like, I know those guys are studs. I watched a lot of those players in college. And same with Brian Thomas, but I don't think I really did a lot of work on him and understand the style of player he is. Like, I loved DK Metcalf in 2019. I loved a player that, yes, they're not the most polished prospect. Their route tree is limited for sure. Like, they're not the most explosive in short areas. However, they are just this huge, athletic, powerful deep threat with long strides, great run after the catch ability. Like if you ask him to run 3 to 4 routes his rookie year, his second year, while he develops those other areas, he's going to be a dog. And that to me is Brian Thomas, who also, by the way, has that DK Metcalf like size and wingspan. He can go up and high point the football. Like contested catch ability is there. I'm annoyed that I didn't really catch on to Brian Thomas earlier. Like he is absolutely a my guy, and it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for the Eagles to trade up to get Thomas. I don't think he'd fall to 22. I think he is the clear receiver. Like if you don't say he's in tier 1 with Neighbors, Harrison, and Dunze, he's wide receiver 1 in tier 2. I don't think he falls outside the top 20. So for the Eagles, like if he falls at 22, I'd take him depending on what the board looks like. But for the Eagles, it's probably not likely. Again, that report they're going to trade up, I really don't believe it. But he's definitely become a my guy for me, for sure. And it's kind of annoying that it's really taken this long. So yeah, I would definitely say Brian Thomas is one of those guys. At corner, Max Melton, I mentioned yesterday. Max Melton is somebody that's been on my radar. Like I love the 4.3 speed, the hops. Like he is just a great vertical. Just a great athlete, really good ball skills, a local kid, right? Played at Rutgers, very familiar with his game in the Jersey, Philadelphia area, really shined at the Senior Bowl. This is a guy that in the slot, we've all said, could start right away in the slot and be one of the better inside corners in football. Like it's a very good slot draft, but I kept him lower on my rankings because he's a little undersized and nobody was saying, people that I trust weren't ever mentioning him as a potential boundary corner. I'm like, well, I don't want to take a slot-dependent corner as much as Avonte Maddox's future is up in the air, and the slot in general is a very important position in the NFL nowadays. A lot of star receivers are playing the majority of the time in the slot, so it's very important, but I don't want to take a slot-dependent player in the first 2 rounds. So I don't want to say Max Melton was off my board, but I had him graded lower than other players based on an Eagles perspective of what they need at corner. But then I saw Daniel Jeremiah, and I said this yesterday in the show, but for those that didn't hear it, Daniel Jeremiah was doing his top 150 prospects, regardless of position, and he had Max Melton in there pretty high. And he mentioned that he thinks Max Melton can translate well at the next level in the slot or on the boundary. And that was enough for me to put him in that tier with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Cooper DeJean. But he really wasn't a my guy for me before that. Like, he normally is a style of player I really like. Again, I prioritize speed and ball skills at this position, at a lot of positions. But hearing DJ say he could play on the boundary, going back and watching the tape and seeing the physicality, I started to think, like, yeah, I think he could. It's not like he's that much smaller than a lot of these boundary corners, like the Trent McDuffies of the world, the Asante Samuel Jr.'s. Like, Asante isn't a huge corner. I could totally see Max Melton being that kind of player at the next level. And he's definitely like a last second my guy, where if the Eagles don't take a corner tomorrow, they trade up for an offensive tackle, or they take a receiver, or they take Brock Bowers at tight end, or an edge rusher, or whatever, defensive tackle, name every other position in the book. Max Melton on day 2 at 50 or 53, like, count me in. I'm kind of into that. I really like that idea. And then you have a young trio of Max Melton, Keely Ringo, and Isaiah Rodgers to figure out what their roles are for the Eagles long term. We'll see. I'm so done with speculation now, though. I'm ready for results. We finally get them tomorrow. I'm so anxious. I'm literally just like juggling batteries during the show. It's like a fidget. I'm ready to get started. We do tomorrow live at 7 p.m. Eastern time on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. The Eagles currently pick at 22 overall, but I imagine they're going to trade up, and we'll be talking about that pick sooner rather than later. So subscribe to the Locked On Eagles podcast on YouTube, also wherever you listen to the show as well, and hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE all throughout the night. We want to hear your takes on what the Eagles do in the first round of the NFL Draft. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, listening, and we'll see you tomorrow for a big night. Let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.